The Journey of Frank Anton Lewis. Book 1. A Product of Domestic Violence. Written by Frank Lewis. The beginning of my story started with a Jamaican father born in Shreveport, Illinois, named Frank Baba Lewis, and a Puerto Rican mother born in Los Angeles General Hospital named Miriam Castro, aka Millie. Pops was the elder of the two, born on March 20th, 1943, and growing up in the South in the 40s was a hard pill to swallow. My father witnessed segregation, racism, and pure hate by the hands of what he referred to as the man. The hate that Pops endured as a youth molded him into a very angry individual with a deep distrust of the white man. My father's anger management issues became too much for his single mother of 8 other children to handle, so at the age of 12, his mother sent him to live with his Aunt Mary in Oakland, California, with the hopes that he would get an education. My mother was born on August 27, 1955, as Pops was settling into the Bay. The Castro family at this time consisted of grandmother Miriam, grandfather Christopher, Uncle Marcus, and the baby Millie. The Castro's family residence was located off the intersections of Florence and Holmes Boulevard. This area was the location of the Florencia 13 gang that Uncle Mark started to associate himself. As Miriam and her family were living in a gang-entrenched environment, Frank was learning about Oakland and that it was very different than back down south. Oakland, California was a completely new experience for Frank, who got the opportunity to see that the man did not have complete control over blacks throughout the country. Pimping was an early hustle that many blacks depended on to make money, and this is what Frank set out to do: be a pimp. With the pimping also came the distribution of narcotics, and violence soon followed. Frank went to Oakland to get an education and only received street knowledge. As Frank grew in the game, Millie was beginning to step in the streets as an attempt at following after her big brother. Mr. Castro had come to the States from Puerto Rico to pursue his dreams of owning his auto mechanic shop and build a good life for his family, so he was very busy at work, as well as Millie's mother, whom worked at LAX. Miriam was a cook for American Airlines and worked 12-hour shifts to help support the family's goals. Mark and Millie took full advantage of the fact that for hours there was no parent supervision. In 1963, 2 of Frank's younger brothers moved to Oakland to live with him. Mark Bones and Lawrence had numerous issues of their own, which resulted in them ending up in Oakland. But they were all that Frank needed to make a team. It took no longer than 2 months for all 3 brothers to make a move. The Lewis brothers decided to set up shop in Los Angeles, California in 1963. The Nickerson Gardens housing projects, located off Imperial and Central Highway in Watts, California, became their new home. Watts was similar to Oakland as far as minorities, drugs, and prostitution. The most notable difference was the level of racism and segregation that faced the brothers by local law enforcement. Rumor has it that, in these days, the chief of police recruited officers from southern states because of their ties to the KKK. It was the job of these officers to segregate blacks from the whites, with Alameda as the border. After dark, blacks caught violating curfew were subject to numerous forms of cruel and unusual treatment. With the lack of legitimate job opportunities, hustling was the biggest attraction to young black youth. Selling drugs, armed robbery, and pimping were for many youth the only conceivable method of making a living, and each of the Lewis brothers had their own way of making money. Pops continued to pimp. Lawrence dealt drugs, and Mark Bones was a stick-up kid. Hollywood was one of the most profitable locations for prostitution, so Pops would send his hoes to the Walk of Fame. Whites dominated the local areas surrounding Watts, such as Compton and Linwood, so Mark Bones would hit licks in those cities. Lawrence made his drug deals within the projects and along Central Avenue, which at this time where all the nightclubs and partying took place. At 8 years old, my mom would witness some of the same evils that Pop was dealing with. The Florence 13 gang was becoming one of the most lethal gangs in Los Angeles, so drive-by shootings, drug deals, and hanging out were a daily occurrence. With a lack of supervision from two working parents, both Mark and Millie could not help out but to notice the negative impact of their environment and follow the bad examples. This happens so much in urban communities and is the first issue that I would like to address. No one can blame parents for working hard to support their families, but at the same time, you have to be aware of what your children are learning as well as the individuals that are teaching them the negative behavior. Learned behavior is accountable for a number of the actions that our children display, so it is important that a majority of it comes from us. In today's world, social media has become the main source of awareness by our youth, so it is even that much harder to get through to the youth. My advice would be to be fair, open-minded, and aware of your children's needs, fears, wants, and goals. I would suggest that you relate to your babies and let them know that you love them. You should also be firm with your kids while at the same time uplifting them to do what is right. Both my parents' childhoods lacked the above parenting skills, and the result was very little understanding, compassion, and knowledge to the best parents that they could be. This is the case in a majority of homes in the hoods, and it is one of the main contributors to prison overcrowding, domestic violence, and gang membership. When you really analyze it, gangs derive from youth attempting to escape dysfunction in the home. My research, understanding, experience, and history tell me that gangs started shortly after the demise of the Black Panther Party. I learned that before Tookie Williams, Raymond Washington, O.G. Pudding, and T. Rogers, there were other black influences that led black movement. These figures were Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, Bunchy Carter, and Geronimo Pratt. Before the Crips and the Bloods, there was a unity within the black race. These are the days that my mother and father grew up in and learned how to be parents as the Black Panther movement went underground to become replaced with the Crips and Bloods. 1965 came around and the Lewis brothers all had their own criminal element. Baba is Frank was pimping full-time, Lawrence was a member of the Nickerson Garden Boys, and Mark Bones was running around in the jungles. The Castro family was bringing in the new year with the grand opening of Castro's Auto and plans on moving to a house. Millie, at 8 years old, made money by standing in front of her apartment as a lookout for the law. My mom has a very distinctive whistle that can be heard from a distance, so when my mom saw the police, she would alert the F-13 members. Uncle Mark was one of the foot soldiers and fighters for the Florence gang. Miss Castro, my grandmother, discovered that she was pregnant in 1965. Attention in the minority communities was growing because of the excessive use of force by law enforcement, unequal schooling, and blatant racism. On August 11th, just 16 days before Miriam's 6 months after opening the Castro Auto Shop, and a few months before Miss Castro was due to give birth to a second son, Uncle Junior, the tension exploded. It all started on Imperial and Avalon with a CHP traffic stop for DUI. A white patrol officer pulled over an African-American motorist, at which point he declared the driver drunk and impounded his vehicle. When the mother of the driver arrived on the scene and requested that she take the car to her home only a block away, the result being arrested, and her other son was locked up also. That is all it took to ignite the frustration that had been building for years in the hood. For 6 days, the city of Watts was set on fire by thousands of frustrated looters, mothers, fathers, sons, and fed-up people. The streets of Watts were flooded with National Guard, curfews were set, and hundreds of businesses burned to the ground, including Castro Autos. All my grandfather's work, tears, and dreams went up in flames within a matter of seconds. My family was not the only family that lost everything and thrown into a complete culture shock. 34 people were killed, nearly 4,000 were arrested, and there were millions of dollars in damage. The historical Watts riots brought great change to Los Angeles and was the beginning of a new generation of black youth. The The baby boomer generation was just reaching their first decade, and many of the black youth lost their fathers and leaders. The most noticeable change began with thousands of whites moving to safer neighborhoods. With new laws and regulations, blacks were able to rent and buy property in areas that they had not been able to in the Jim Crow past. My father moved to the jungles in December 1965 and took his pimp game with him. Devastated by the destruction of my grandfather's mechanic shop, they lost their home and had to move to Lenox with his brother Johnny Loco. Both of these areas were about to be overrun by gangs and sent both my parents down dangerous paths. The Black Peastone Gang was in control of the jungles in the end of the 1960s, and Lenox 13 was becoming a lethal fraction in the South Bay, where the Castros were settling into having their own to now being with a whole new group of family members. As for my dad, he was living lavish off his pimping and trying to expand. My mom was dealing with her father being around more than ever. Mr. Castro was angry, drunk, and depressed, which led to conflict between mother and daughter. These times truly molded my parents and sent them on the path that would lead to me being born. My parents met after both of their lives took a number of twists and turns. It started with my father getting deeply involved in the pimp game. In the 70s, my pops had a nice-sized stable that consisted of at least 6 streetwalkers and a spot in the Jays, which had now become the new ghetto for young black youths in the 1970s. Pills, powder, and heroin were some of the most popular narcotics at the time, and Uncle Lawrence would keep Baba fully supplied with all of them. A smooth operation was bringing in a lot of money for the two brothers, since Mark Bones was arrested in the riots and unable to partake. My mother's journey ended up in the streets of Lenox, California, where she was working underage at a hamburger stand on Century and Inglewood Avenue. Century Boulevard was one of the most famous tracks next to Fig, so my mom built a bond with a number of the streetwalkers. My mom worked the graveyard shift of the 24-hour restaurant, so she witnessed a lot on that corner. My father would run out of luck one night in 1972 when some smoker attempted to rob him for over $3,000 in the jungle. Baba, the assailant, shot Baba in the back of the head, at which point he turned around and shot the smoker to death. My pop's actions got him a one-way ticket to Folsom to serve 3 years for involuntary manslaughter. As Baba served his time, his sister Gussie moved to Los Angeles to attend UCLA Business School, and she would establish a bond with Baba during his sentence. In 1975, my mom was 15 years old, taking orders for a small mom-and-pop taco shop and helping her boyfriend Bird from the Slauson Boys sell his powder. This is where my mother and father met, on the border of Inglewood and Lenox. My father was astonished at how young my mother was and how strong her hustle was. 2 months, moms and pops spoke to each other. At that burger stand, they were living together. My father wanted my mother to be his bottom hoe, and he was grooming her for this position. My mom, however, had other plans. She saw herself as the woman that could change Baba's life, so she stuck around for years of drama, heartache, and depression. Baba believed that he was a gorilla pimp, so he had a problem putting hands on my mother. This is where domestic violence entered into my family. Domestic violence comes in many shapes and sizes. There are several contributing factors which cause individuals to commit this crime. In the 70s and early 80s, there was very little attention given to the issue of domestic violence. My father started the relationship very loving. Then he started to beat her and treat her poorly. Baba was taking his anger out on moms because he knew no other way. It sounds like an excuse. That is not what my intentions are. I just want you to understand the thinking of the criminal-minded. Most of Americans are born to the American dream, and all they know is how loving it was to grow up. Unfortunately, there are those that did not have a good life. My pops was dealing with some issues. The biggest issue was that his 2 hoes that he had on the track were murdered. Being that my mother was not willing to walk, my father was at a loss for money and desperate to make some money. Moms felt guilty that she was not bold enough to sell her body, so she used her Florence connection to get her hands on some powder. The powder helped keep the bills paid, yet it got Pops locked up again. Baba was busted for a dope case in 1976 and sentenced to 18 months back in Folsom. This is when my father's sister, Gussie, reached out to Baba and let him know that if he got out and started a family and got a job, she would help him. Aunt Gussie was a USC graduate, president of a large insect exterminator, and owned a number of properties. The promise from Gussie gave my father something to come home to. Pops got his GED and his janitorial certificate and prepared himself to come home. My mother was back at home helping her mom out that was pregnant with her 5th child. Mom had 2 brothers and 2 sisters now. Her father was running a nightclub with his brother Johnny Loco and was secretly writing to Baba. The whole time that my mom was staying with her parents, she was saving money to help Baba get on his feet. Baba got out of prison in March 1978. He and Moms got an apartment on 89th and Broadway. Pops got a car with some of the money that Moms had saved for him, and to pay the bills, my father got his first job at Boys Market. The only problem that they had was my grandfather and Aunt Gussie. Aunt Gussie felt that Moms was a bad influence on my father, and my grandfather felt that my father was too black for my mom. Despite the hate that my father and my mother were receiving from their closest family, I was born on December 11th, 1979. I was born in the period of my parents' life that they were searching for change. There is no book, How to Raise a Family, and my parents obviously did not have the perfect examples of how to raise a child, so my childhood was a little out of the box. I was born at 5 a.m. at Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, California. I have very few memories of living on Broadway and 89th. Because soon after I was born in 1980, my mom and father were married, and Aunt Gussie decided to honor her promise of helping Baba get on his feet, and we got to rent one of her properties on the east side. We would be staying on 118th and San Pedro. In 1981, crack hit the scene just as the 11-8 East Coast Crips were developing into one of Los Angeles' most lethal gangs. Unfortunately for my family, we would move next door to the gang's trap. Our house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garage, a front yard, and a backyard. I remember the feeling of joy having my own bedroom and backyard to play in. This joy quickly turned into fear and despair. With the creation of crack came a violence like never seen before. I was born into this generation. The Crips had been the dominant force since the end of the 1960s and into the 1970s, but by the 1980s, the Bloods had doubled in numbers and were demanding their respect from the much larger Crips. Some of the earliest Blood gangs were just blocks away from East Coast Crips territory, so I would have a front row seat in one of Los Angeles' most deadly periods of history, the beginning of the crack epidemic. The same year that I was born, one of the original founders of the Crips was murdered, Raymond Washington. With the death of one of the leaders, the Crips became undivided and started to kill each other. Crack only added fuel to a gang war that was already out of control. LAPD responded to the gangs with forming Crash. This is where my journey will start. The place on 118th Street. The date was May 26, 1983, and it was NBA playoffs time, and my father's LA Lakers were battling the dreaded Boston Celtics for world championship. Frank, it's time. I have to go to the hospital. My 9-month pregnant mother yelled as my father and I sat on the couch pleading with Magic and the team to play defense. Popcorn, baby, can you hold it until halftime? This is a big game. Pop yelled out. Moms was running around the house in an attempt to prepare herself for the newest addition to the family. Frank, I need some help here, please. My mother pleaded as my father looked over to me and said, Boy, go help your damn mother. My pops had a mean, angry personality that I feared, yet he had a strength, courage, and a determination that I admired. Pops was not affectionate. He did not hug. He didn't say, "I love you," or shoot hoops at the park with you. What he did do was guide me, teach me, and discipline me. My father was my hero, and my biggest joy was watching Lakers basketball with him. At 3 years old, the only way that I was able to do this was in my car seat. We waited in the car until the first time out, and my father raced to the car in order to program the car radio to the game. As Chick Hearns and Stu Lance called the game, we made our way to Centinela Hospital for the birth of my little sister, Felicia. My mom had to walk herself into the hospital because the game was still on, and as my father and I sat in his GT Volkswagen, the Lakers won the world championship shortly after Felicia was born. I enjoyed helping my mother out with her motherly duties. She made me feel good to be a big brother. And before you knew it, I was going to school like a big boy. Kindergarten was scary to me because I was a mama's boy and did not want to be without my mom. 118th Street Elementary was where my mother would have to walk only 1 block to get me to school. When we were children, it is our parents' responsibility to provide us with the proper learning environment. In the hood, a large percentage of parents are unaware of these skills. The Watts riots of 1965 damaged the cycle of a large group of African Americans. You have to consider the over 4,000 people that were arrested. It is safe to say that the great majority of those were black men. There had to be at least double that number of children left without a father. The father was removed out of the child's life, and then you had racism, poverty, single mothers having to leave these kids home while they worked, and hate. The children of this generation were now the kids in the hood, starting all the division and committing the crime. This is an example of learned behavior and how it can affect a whole generation. The gangs were taking over the streets and corrupting the youth. As I grew older, my father tried to install values, ethics, and morals. My father taught me that men did not put their hands on women. You work hard for your money and always respect your elders. My respect, fear, and understanding of my father allowed me to be a very respectful adolescent. My father was my leader, so the kids at school that were already in gangs and not following instructions did not even catch my attention. Pop has offered incentive for me that helped me stay focused and on track. If my teacher would give my mother an appropriate progress report when she spoke to her at the end of the class on Friday, I could go to work at the market with my father and help him. My father was now the lead janitor at Ralph's Market, so he would teach me the tricks of the trade. I know that not all individuals grow up the same, but I know that until this day, these memories put a smile on my face. I encourage all the fathers that read this to make some kind of impression on your children's life. Like I said earlier, my father did not show much, but him being in my life meant the world to me and influenced me to strive to make him proud. Our children do not care if we have a job, a car, and nice clothes, because they are going to love us regardless. It is when we neglect our children, disappoint our children, and lie to our children, that is when we lost their respect and trust. As children, we do not have a real understanding of what it is like to pay bills, to have responsibilities, and to raise a family. It is the adults' responsibility to help teach their children about these issues. If you are not from the hood, I understand how you may wonder how some people become criminals. This is lesson 1. Neglect and mistrust is one of the greatest contributors to youth rebelling and in seeking attention in the streets. Older gang members are always looking for young neglected kids running the streets with no guidance, and they lure them into trusting them. Gangs offer drugs, companionship, and an enemy to take out their hate and hurt. It is a trap. I am telling you this out of experience, young people. Life is bigger than gangbanging is, and you will have no idea if you fall for that trap that the hood has to offer. When I was banging, I would hear all of this all the time, and it went in one ear and out the other. The thing is, I was hearing this speech from preachers, smoked out OGs, and a whole bunch of people that have not walked in my shoes. It is hard to accept the lesson from an individual that has not felt the pain that you have, that has not put in work as you have, and that has not done the time that you have done. I speak out of experience. I have walked the streets. I have put in the time. I have bumped my head, and I truly believe that the hood has no long-term success. Most of us will agree that when we are angry, we do and say things that in the end we regret. Gangbanging is the decision that 99.9% of bangers end up regretting. This regret may come when you get shot or you miss your first birthday due to incarceration. It may happen when you see the tears in your mother's eyes when the judge sentenced you to life, or it could be as your family puts your body in the ground. The pain that you will face throughout the years as a gang member will far outlast the pain of being a single child or a child of a drug addict. When it comes down to it, if you are truly honest with yourself, if you keep it 100, and if you keep it real, there are only a few alternatives to joining the gang. Let us look at the history of gangbanging. Think about your own set, hood, barrio, for a minute. Reflect on what you have witnessed. Think about your homies that are no longer living. And think about how many homies you have that are washed up. How many of us have homies that are enjoying the benefits of retirement from the hood? How many homies have made enough bread to buy a home and get a check every month for their participation in the hood? How many homies have not been to the pen or the county jail? The truth is hard to accept, but it is what it is. Now, I want you to ask yourself, has it really been worth it? The trips upstate, the fades in the county, the bullet holes in your body, or the sorrow that we have put our loved ones through? I say hell no and apologize for preaching, but I know that when I was a young lost soul, no one put these issues in my mind. And the homies never let me know the real about gangbanging. Being that I'm trying to make a change in the future that my children will be growing up in, I am obligated to expose the trap that thousands of our young people are being deceived by. It's time to stop the tears from falling down the eyes of our mothers' cheeks. It's time to close down some of these prisons because they have no inmates to fill them with. And it's time to become a united race. Thank you for tuning in to DustyVisionTV. Please hit that like button if you have not already. And if this is your first time joining the channel and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, you just might appreciate this bonus clip I'm about to play for you right now.
Damn, man, COVID hit, right? And so initially, we was trying to figure out.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Like the rest of America and the world, what the hell is COVID? What is this COVID-19 stuff? So we're packed in the day room like sardines, standing room only in front of the TV, watching news on 57 different channels. You know, every channel is talking about COVID. Then the president finally comes on and he's saying some stuff, right? So the first thing they did is they quarantined us, right? And the way they did it was you had to stay in the dorm. You couldn't leave the dorm, right? Other than for child. And then even when we went to child, only one dorm at a time, so you would never mix with other dorms. On the yard I was on, there was 10 dorms. I was in dorm 10, right? So once one person in the dorm caught COVID, it spread like wildfire. You got to imagine, we sleep in, the bunks are about 18 to 20 inches apart. And we talking 90 bunks, right? Or 45 bunks, rather, with 90 people. So if the dude in the bunk next to you is coughing, it ain't got but 18 inches to fly to get on you. Within a day or two, 50% of the dorm is sick. This is going on in every dorm on the yard. This is going on in practically every cell, every jail cell, every prison cell in California, right? And even across the country, right? So their plan was to put us into isolation if you test positive for COVID, which means they were going to send you over to the East facility where they had prison cells, right? The whole. They will put you in the cell, and then you would have to stay there for like 15 days, and then you would have to test negative for COVID before you could come back to the dorm. So it became this merry-go-round. People would test positive in the dorm, go over to the East facility. They'd be over there for a couple of weeks until they finally test negative. Then they come right back to the dorm where people are still sick and catch it again. We started wondering, when is this going to ever end? How long is this going to go on? Right? Right around the outbreak of the COVID, I had moved from dorm 10 over to a different yard, right? And on that yard, it was the same situation. It was throughout the whole West facility. It was the same situation. Whole dorms are infected with people. They come drive up with a van in the middle of the night, put people in the van, put your property in the van, drive you over to the East facility. We don't see you for a couple of weeks. When you come back, you're in a different dorm because everybody in this dorm then already left, and they done brought some other people in their place. So it's like coming back to a brand new dorm, or if the dorm is full, you got to go to a different dorm. It just became like musical chairs. They kept just floating us around. This was going on for months. People just getting sick, and then eventually people started dying, right? So the best they could offer us is that at a certain point, they started letting the dorms go out for like 2 hours a day, but without no other dorms. There would just be your dorm outside. So you basically can go out, walk around, get some air, work out a little bit, come back in, and there it is. People with the COVID cough. They passing out the little masks. We got sneeze guards, right? The kind that surgeons wear, the little blue mask with the little straps that go around your ear. And then finally, they came with some better masks. People started making cloth masks. It just became a real nightmare for custody as well as the people that were incarcerated. It was a nightmare for everybody. The staff getting sick, we're getting sick, and nobody has a solution. Nobody has an answer for this, right? Medical don't know what to do, and then people started dying, right? So I'm thinking to myself, like, bro, I done came too far, man. I done survived the federal penitentiary. I done survived Pelican Bay, Calipatria, and some other ugly places. You know, killer cops, gangs on the street, gangs in prison, riots, the LA County Jail. I done came too far to get knocked down by a virus. I ain't going out like that, right? I just put it in my head that, man, I'm finna stay healthy, stay working out, drinking water, wear this little mask, keep my distance from people, and I'm finna survive this. You know, they tried to kill me with a life sentence. That didn't work. They damn sure ain't finna kill me with no virus. And then I got sick, finally. After maybe 6, 7, 8 months of COVID, I finally get sick and test positive. And I'll never forget, at that time, the night lady, she used to come to people's bed at night and give them a little tap on the shoulder to wake up and tell them, roll up your stuff. your test results came back, you're positive for COVID, they're going to be pulling up in a little while in the van to take you over to the East facility. So that was like a thing in that dorm. Like, man, you know, once they turn off the lights, motherfuckers finna come up missing. Right? So one night, I'm laying in bed. I got on my thermals, and it was just got real cold. Thinking to myself, like, damn, man, did they turn off the heat? So I got up. I go to the restroom. The police office is right there across from the restroom. The lady, the officer, she's checking the thermostat. She has to write down the temperature every so often. And I tell her, I say, could you turn off the heat? I feel like y'all turned off the heat. And she looked at me with big eyes. She said, you're cold? I said, yeah, man, it's not usually this cold up in here. She said, it's 70 odd degrees, whatever the temperature was. That's when I knew I had stuck my foot.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
By the time I came back from the bathroom, I knew that I was in trouble. Right? So they come the next day, they test, and for whatever reason, my test came back negative. But I knew I was sick. I could feel it. I felt it. I had never felt nothing attack my body the way that I felt that night. I knew I was sick. But like I said, the next day when I tested with the rest of the dorm, it was negative. And I kept testing negative for like 3 tests in a row. This is over the course of like a week or two. Right? And then finally, so many people in my dorm had tested positive for COVID. At this time, that dorm was probably about 60 people in that dorm. So many people had tested positive that we was down to like the last 6 that hadn't tested positive. And so we took another test, and ironically, they said all of us are positive and moved us all out of the dorm. But instead of taking us to the East facility, they just moved us to another dorm where everybody in there was positive. Right? And so they brought all of the people back to our dorm now that it was empty, who was coming off the East facility, and repopulated the dorm. Man, this went on for like a year or so. Right? And finally, they started coming around. We took the vaccines. They offered us the vaccines, right? There was this big old thing on the West facility about versus non-vaxxers. The same stuff y'all saw on the television and the same stuff that was happening on the street was happening in the prison. Vaxxers against non-vaxxers. All they trying to kill us. It's like the Tuskegee experiment. You can't trust these people. They finna pump some of that stuff in you and you're gonna get sick. It was pandemonium. It was insane. I went and got vaccinated. And when they came back around with the booster, I got boosted up. All right? And I never got sick again after that. I saw some people have allergic reactions to it immediately, and others started to develop long-term effects, symptoms, right? And it started making me second-guess my decision to get vaccinated in the first place. When I started seeing that some of my friends were getting really, really sick, losing weight, having joint issues, just all kind of medical issues that they never had before, right? But you felt almost compelled to get vaccinated.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Because of the situation we were in. The way we were looking at it, the way it was being presented to us, is or die. So the pandemic is starting to wind down. Mostly, I'm going to say maybe 80% or more of the people on the facility had vaccinated, and the cases went down until finally there was only like, a few people a week going into quarantine. And then suddenly people started treating it like the flu and just thugging it out in the dorm. Like, you knew they were sick, so stay from around his bunk, and he'll mask up, and we'll kind of like treat it with home remedies, and he'll get through it so that the whole dorm doesn't get quarantined and he gets shipped to isolation for 15 days. And that's kind of how it went until it finally winded all the way on down to where there was virtually no more cases, of the pandemic on the compound. By this time, it felt like that we had survived the apocalypse. Getting sick in prison is one thing, dealing with like the flu or anything like that. First and foremost, you gotta understand that people incarcerated in hospitals, the medical is like, it's a thing in prison, in California prisons. The first thing I was ever told by one of the old heads was, don't never let them people cut on you, and don't let them pull none of your teeth out your mouth, youngsters. You'll have your whole grill will be gone, and you might die on the operating table. That's the kind of reputation medical had in the California prison system when I first came in as a kid. And so all of these years later, it's like, I've always been really reluctant to see medical. Always went for my regular checkups, always went for my regular dental visits, but I've been fortunate that I haven't had to have any major surgeries or anything like that, and nothing really more than getting my wisdom teeth pulled and regular deep cleanse on the dental front. I got my whole grill and I'm in excellent health. But now we're in like this apocalyptic state where, man, if you get to feeling some kind of way or coughing or something like that, man, you better go see the doctor. And that became a thing. Like, man, people was like, man, you can't trust these people. They start talking Tuskegee experiment talk again. Like you just can't trust medical. And this was a scary thing to see people that was really sick, that really had health conditions, go out to medical in the aftermath of all of this and just never come back. You don't know if they died. You don't know if they got transferred to another institution. You don't know if they just stuck in the hospital. It's like one of those crazy cable series, and the plot of the show is once they put you in that van, they don't come back. You see that van pulling up or whatever, you see that ambulance pulling up, and you just be shaking your head like, damn, I hope bruh make it back. So we had to figure out our health situation inside of an environment where you have no real say-so in your own personal health. Can you imagine that? Not having no real say-so over your own personal health? The only thing close to that is what I've read about slavery and black women, where they said that women had no say-so over their body, the way they were treated by plantation owners. That's what it felt like for me. Somebody else is in control of my physical well-being, my body, telling me what, where, when, how I'll be treated, what I'll be treated for and not treated for, what we're going to send you to the hospital for, what we won't send you to the hospital for, what we will or won't order x-rays for. This is a scary thing. You don't have no right to say, no, I need to get an MRI. I need x-rays. I'm feeling, oh, if the doctor say, I don't think so, that's the end of the conversation. So we trying to figure all of this out in the aftermath of this pandemic, and also trying to figure out, because they put parole board hearings on hold that entire time. Nobody was going to the parole board, right? The parole board eventually switched over from in-person going to the parole board, where you walk in the room and the parole board commissioners are there, the DA is there, the family of the victim is there, to video. Now they working from home. So now we're trying to figure out this whole new paradigm about going to the parole board on a video screen. This had never happened before in the history of California parole board hearings. Nobody was going to know. Now it's commonplace. This was a foreign thing. Like, how does that work? What does that feel like? Is it the same thing as when we was going in person? Like, that was a whole paradigm shift in that. We're trying to figure this out, where now they're saying all parole board hearings are going to be through video. Now we're trying to figure out and get back to normal like the rest of the world with our programming. Even though the pandemic was over, the programming was still at a standstill. They didn't just open back up the yard and say everything goes back to normal, go back to doing whatever you guys were doing. Everything was limited. Only so many people can be in this area. Only so many people can go over to the library at one time. You know, only so many people can be grouped in the bleachers at one time. The places where we used to have the self-help groups, some of those areas in the prison we no longer had access to at that time. So it's like, what do? You got to get ready for the parole board. We got to get these groups going to make sure that dudes is continuing their rehabilitation and getting themselves ready for that hearing. But we can't even go to the place where we used to do this at. And then if we do, only, instead of 40 people going in there, they said only 10 people, and y'all got to sit so many seats apart. So myself and some others.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Myself and some others on CMC West yard at that time, post-pandemic, we took it back to the streets. We started going out in the middle of the yard. We started going to the bleachers. We started going in the day room, and we started utilizing those spaces that were available to us, and we took the groups outside. Like, this don't stop. We got to get home. We can't die up in here like this. You know? We need a couple of hours of this day room time. We got to cut that TV off for a few hours, bro, and get this in. Or we're going to die up in here. People got to get ready to go. We got to get out. And that became the movement for us to get home, was that people had to make some changes and some adjustments that, man, TV time, people will kill for TV time. What do you mean we got to turn off the TV and the game's finna come on? Yeah, man, we need this space for like an hour, bro. We got like 30 people up in here that need to go to group. 10 of them go to the board in the next 30 to 60 days. So now we wasn't politicking about gang stuff and drugs and phones and all of that nonsense. We politicking about life. You know, about what we going to do about this medical situation, what we going to do about how we allocate our time. We're going to make some concessions that we never would have done before. We're going to let Hispanics, whites, blacks, everybody, we all going up in the same day room. It was hard.
Fools can't go to the store. Nigga tell you, oh, he was out of bounds. But he grocery store, the liquor store. Why is he out of bounds? Because he went to the neighborhood liquor. Hey, but two of them, they ran out of what he wanted over there. He come over here, now he out of bounds. Man, this is what we allowed ourselves to fall victim of.
That's deep.
And what happens now is you got, oh man, check this out. Check out the byproduct of all of this. The byproduct. He finna, God knows how long, maybe 25 to life.
25.
That means he'll be through with heterosexual.
Heterosexual.
Cash money, driving the car, anything got to do with any kind of real meat.
He ain't gonna be having heterosexual sex for the next 25 possible years, possibly. Now, there are crazy chicks who will visit you and give you the thing. If they even allow that, I don't even know how that works, but these are things you don't think of when you're out there hanging out with the ops. This may be the last time you ever penetrate a female.
Done. Okay.
Think about it, guys. Think about it.
The brother who got killed, couldn't know where he shot him at. Somebody may benefit from his organs being utilized. He may be able to save somebody's life because they're going to break him down like a 57 Chevy and pick apart.
Oh, yes, they do. Do your homework.
Okay. Heart, spleen, lungs, all that stuff gets redistributed and repurposed to help somebody else save their lives. Meanwhile, his family got to find money. He probably don't have at 16 years old. There's probably no insurance policy. They got to raise money to bury or cremate him.
Car washes, T-shirts.
Okay? The other, he just secured his...
Selling plates. See it too much in the community.
Secured somebody job security for the next 25 years while they watch him in the penitentiary along with the other brothers that follow in his footsteps.
All we're doing is creating job security, dog, for them, homie. Are we not hip yet? Do we not care yet? Are we going to keep the cycle going? Job security. It's because this dude's going to be in prison for the next 25 years. Someone's going to have a job for the next 25 years. All off of us, man. And they tell me it's the white man I should fear when it's the own kind doing all the killing here.
Too much. It's already there. Meanwhile, nobody don't tell you about this part right here.
They don't tell you
about that part. All them homies that put you up to do what you did makes you feel good. That makes you feel that what you did was going to be right for the hood. Ain't no game, ain't no backup plan, ain't no support plan, ain't no nothing. You out there on your own. You did it for the hood, but you out there on your own.
No social security benefits. No pension. Just you sitting in a cell, rotting away for the rest of your natural life.
You out there on your own. And me and my buddy were just talking about this a little while ago. I said, Negro, I love you, but I'm not crashing out for you. I wouldn't do it. Don't ask me for that.
I'm not crashing out for anybody out there. That's why I couldn't be a gangster. Why did I never join a gang? Dusty Vision. Why'd you never join a gang? I knew a lot of gangsters growing up. I could have easily went down that route. Growing up in some of the areas that I grew up in. I saw those kids over there. I saw them. We all saw them. We all saw those kids. A little more swagger. Oh man, I saw him smoking marijuana. I saw him smoking it in the back of the bleachers. Yeah, man, he wears a certain color rag. Could have went down that route. But I knew early. There's a few reasons why I never wanted to be a gangster. A lot of it started in 1992 when a movie called American Me came out. When American Me came out, and although this apparently was not this did not really happen, and unfortunately, this was an untrue part of that story. But when I saw what was happening in American Me, I was like, nah, man, prison ain't for me. Nope. Also, I knew off top I was a snitch. I'm a fucking snitch. You come at me wrong, I'm snitching. We do a crime together and I get caught, I'm snitching. I'm a snitch. But I'm a civilian, so it's okay to be a snitch. It's okay to be a snitch. If I see something across the street in my neighborhood that I pay taxes for, I see something across the street that I don't like, I'm calling the police. It is what it is. Oh, I have a very good relationship with the local police and sheriffs. I go to coffees with cops. You ever been to a coffee with a cop? You should try it one day. Especially if you have a house and you care about your community. Go to a coffee with a cop. Random Tuesday, they'll meet at like a McDonald's or something. You'll just have coffee with the local sheriffs and you can ask them any kind of questions you want. I enjoy stuff like this. I've been pulled over and let go because a cop recognized me and was like, oh, he's cool as hell. You can go ahead, man. You're good. Can work in my favor. I'm a snitch. Don't do a crime with me. I'm telling you right now. If I ever get hooked on Fenty or something like that and I start doing crime in 20 years, remember you heard this, we get caught together. It's your ass and mine. It's going to be yours. But let's finish this clip up.
Okay. That's a video on Instagram about a brother hop in the car. And what we doing, man? Homeboy give him a shotgun. We're going to put these, working on these fools. No, I'm not going. Pull over. I'm not doing that. Now, hey, I'm going to give you some money.
I'm going to be like Trey. Let me out the car.
Nah, he did.
Let me out the car, though, boy. Let me out the car. Hey, Monster. Let me out the car, Monster. Hey, Dookie. You hear me, Dookie? Let me out the car, man. Because if not, all y'all monkeys are going to jail, prison.
To my girl, man, I'm not getting.
I'm a snitch.
I'm not going to crash out behind your girl, and I'm not going to feel sorry for you when you go to the penitentiary or if you get killed. I'm sorry, dude. You got a chance to turn around and let this go, but you want to follow through. And it's a funny video, but it's a video that needs to go viral because it's one of the realest videos you're going to see.
One of the realest videos you're ever going to see is that 16-year-old kid breaking down in court after receiving a sentence for doing a crime that I guarantee he regrets. What do you think? Comment down below. I would love to hear your comments. And smash that like button if you haven't already. And if this is your first time joining the channel and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. Are white folks really the enemy? That's going to be the topic, general topic of today's program. As you know, I love to watch YouTube, frequent YouTube, and I came across a few videos, a few clips that I wanted to share with you guys and get your point of view on it as I share my point of view. Are white folks really the enemy? Miss Pat, very, very funny stand-up comedian, female stand-up comedian, black woman, was on Club Shay Shay recently. Shannon Sharp, blowing up the scene, right? Shannon Sharp's doing his thing. He had Miss Pat on, very funny comedian. If you've never checked out Miss Pat, I would highly suggest, if you love good comedy, she has a real story too. Like, her story is crazy. Check out Miss Pat. But she discussed something on Club Shay Shay that I thought was interesting, and I want to share it with you guys. She talked about one of the only people helping her out when times were rough was Joe Rogan. Let's listen to Miss Pat break this down on Club Shay Shay.
Joe a nice person. Joe, you know, I hear a lot of things about Joe. People say he's racist, and I said, no, that's not the Joe I know. He's nice. If I ever need something, I can pick up the phone and call him. Hey, Joe, I can be honest with you.
I love how black people say foam. They say foam instead of phone.
I can ask Joe to tweet out a show or help me with a show before I can ask a black comedian.
Ooh. She said she can rely on Joe Rogan, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, let's go biggest podcast, biggest. He is our Johnny Carson. He is our Jay Leno. Joe Rogan, the biggest name right now in the game, will stop everything he's doing and tweet out a show where Miss Pat was performing. And what did she say? Before any black comedian would. Are white folks really the enemy? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's keep it pushing. This is Miss Pat talking about Joe Rogan helping her out.
And that's bad to say. When the pandemic hit, two people called me and asked me, was I going to make it through the pandemic? And one of them was Joe Rogan. Wow. And I said, huh? I said, no, I'm going to be okay. He said, you good? You good? And the other one was Bert Kreischer.
Two white guys. Now, one black comedian checked in on Miss Pat. Oh, Dusty Vision, it's not our thing. We don't have to check in on to make sure if someone's doing okay. Well, why did Joe Rogan and Bert Kreischer, two white dudes, feel like they should check on Miss Pat in 2020 when things were obviously going bad for comedians. There wasn't a stand-up comedian anywhere. There were all the stand-up were closed. Everything was closed. Joe Rogan and Bert Kreischer checked in on Miss Pat. Not one black comedian did. Is this thing on? That's right, I said 2 white guys checked on Miss Pat before any black comedian did. Does it have to do with the crabs in a barrel thing? I'm just throwing it out there. Let's keep it pushing. Miss Pat talking about Joe Rogan being one of the only people to help her out in her career.
That's a normal.
When no other black person would.
Be okay. I'm good. Not one black comedian called me and asked me.
Not one.
So you've been injured in a recent car accident and you want to get a major check like this right here. Here's what you're going to do. Use this app.
Are you gonna be okay? You gonna make it through the pandemic? I don't even think we checked on each other like that. No, we didn't. I mean, you know, Joe.
Because a lot of time, Miss Pat, when we call one another, we automatically assume, oh, you trying to find out something, you fishing.
Yeah, sometimes.
Why is that, black folks? We talk about helping each other out and sticking together. We got to stick together. The other side is evil. Pale skins are evil. But we don't even help each other out. It's a perfect example. Let's keep it pushing.
You fishing. You ain't called to sincerely check on me. You just try to, yeah, I know Miss Pat ain't doing good. I don't know.
Yeah, but that ain't how I took it from them. I mean,
no, I'm not. No. I'm saying when we do that.
Yes. You gonna make it through this? I went downstairs in my basement and started painting my house in Indiana. The whole time the pandemic went on, I remodeled the house.
Right.
I mean, but you know, and my daughter get on me all the time because she just see things one way. I see things down the middle. Like when people be talking that crap about Joe Rogan, that ain't the Joe Rogan I know.
Right.
He's a friend. He cares. If I call him, he'll pick up the phone. If he can help me, he will help me. And
are white folks really the enemy? That's the question. Let's talk. Miss Pat breaking it down on Club Shay Shay about how Joe Rogan, only one that checked in on her. None of her people checked in on her. What happened to that, huh? Remember 2020 was all about that? Why weren't you checking in on Miss Pat, huh?
I mean, there were times I asked certain comedians to tweet out my show, and they wouldn't even do it. I asked Joe to do it, and no problem, Pat, just send it to me.
Now, let me stop it right there. Because this is why it upsets me when I hear a lot of black folks say that white folks are the R word. Rhymes with basis. Can't say it on YouTube for whatever reason. Let's go basis. Let's just say basis. When I hear black folks say white folks are basis, really upsets me. You want to know something? While I've been doing this show for this specific channel, going on for what, 5-6 years now, I've had more help from outside people. Not my people. I've had more help from outside people than I got from my own people. And it's not just me. That's a common thing. Oh, that's a common thing, baby. We're crabs in a barrel. We don't help each other out. Me, I'm the total opposite. If I can give you game, I'm going to give you game. And I guarantee you right now, there are between 10 and 20 other podcasts that can say that I've took an hour or two out of my time. Whether they're black, white, Asian, Mexican, I don't care. Where I took time out of my schedule to sit down with them and teach them a few things. But when it comes to my career and my doing my thing, I've gotten more support from outsiders. It's a damn shame. Ladies and gentlemen, on the line, I have Dr. Derek Cologne. What up, brother?
What up, brother? Can you hear me good?
I hear you perfectly, man. Definitely appreciate you
All
joining the
right.
program.
Man, thank you. Thank you for having me, bro.
Yeah, most def.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the hip hop portion and talk about the Latinos' contribution to hip hop, I would just, like to get to know a little bit about where you came from. So let's take it all the way back, man, to the beginning. Tell everybody where you're from.
I am from the Bronx, New York, born in 1967, and lived in the Bronx until I was 12 years old. At 12, we moved upstate New York and kept going back and forth from upstate back to the Bronx, moved back to the Bronx in the 80s, and then, moved around, moved to Rhode Island, from Rhode Island, moved to Tampa, Florida, where I'm at right now. So, yeah, man, it's been a journey.
Okay. Well, yeah, those are some important years, man. The late 60s, early 70s, especially when it comes to hip hop and the creation of hip hop. Many would say that's when it was really established, was the early 70s. What do you remember about the early hip hop? What I'm saying, when you started hearing about this thing, it probably wasn't called hip hop back then. It wasn't called hip hop, in fact. But what do you remember about this culture that just started taking over the streets?
Well, I think what I remember most is, again, we're in the Bronx, and it is technically I'm in the South Bronx. And what I remember the most is like when my moms would take me on, subway trips. We go on the train, we're visiting my sister, we're visiting my aunt in Manhattan. And I would just remember like the bombing, like the graffiti tags. This is the early 70s, right? So I'm seeing these trains just inside, just destroyed. And I remember that. And I kind of didn't know that what this really was. What was this thing happening with all this writing all over the walls and on the trains? And then I started to really be exposed to, some of the early breakbeats. Apache being one of them. I had Apache about 1975. It came out in 73. And somebody, please excuse me, somebody just donated it to me. In 75, I'm 8 years of age, right? And so everybody on the block kind of knew that Derek was, he was just this kid who loved music. I was going to record stores not far from my house and buying 45s and doing all that. So somebody gave me Apache. And I remember I would play that out of my window as a young 8-year-old kid, 9 years old, 10 years old. And I would start to hear these breaks, right? So, as time went on, you hear the different ones. And then I started to notice breaking. And that the first time I saw breaking was 1975, actually when it began, right? So breaking on the floor begins around late 74, closer to 75. And the reason I know this is because I have school pictures. And so in my school pictures, you remember the old school pictures where you would have the little plaque at the bottom and you'd be in the
top
picture
corner
with your class.
yeah.
You'd be in the picture and it would sort of say, 75, 76 school year in Bronx, New York. So I have that picture still. I still have that picture. And there were kids in my class that I started to notice were doing this dance, right? And they would start on the top. And again, this was very basic. This was top rock. Again, we didn't, at that time, I didn't really know a name for what they were doing, but I knew it was called breaking, but I didn't know what these moves were called at that young age. So top rock to down rock to floor rocking and to a simple freeze. And so what I saw was that in my school. I saw it on my block. I saw it in my sister's neighborhood, 184th Street. And I would see both Black and Puerto Rican kids doing this dance to these rare grooves, mainly Apache, right? And then, 76 happens, 77 happens. This is the year of the blackout. And the year of the blackout is when I start to notice something else. And it's this kind of talking, right? And so they're doing this early, what later came to be known as rapping. We called it MCing. And so they were doing like the early stuff, the dip, dip, dive, so socialize, you clean out your ears and you open your eyes. Yes, y'all. You don't stop. That was the early stuff. And there was a kid, my one of my best friends, his name was Bino. He had an older brother named Derek as well. And Derek used to stand in front of our building. Now, I lived on Echo Place. So Echo Place runs into Echo Park, and Echo Park is an early hip-hop park where they threw early jams. And so, anybody who knows, the South Bronx parks knows about Echo Park. Crotona Park, Echo Park, 63 Park, 23 Park, those are the parks. But so I used to play stickball in Echo Park. And so Derek used to have his JVC radio, and he would have these tapes, and it would be this stuff going, this rhyming. And I would ask him, what is this? And, I'm 10 years old now. So he's like, these are the MCs. And so, again, everybody on the block we kind of knew each other very well. It's a small, tight-knit community, Black and Hispanic. And so, I started to gravitate toward that. And again, this is the year. So this is how I'm tracing when this is happening. So this is the year of the blackout, 1977. It's the year of the notorious Son of Sam, the 44 caliber killer, David Berkowitz. And so I remember it's the summertime. I don't remember the month. I know it was after the blackout. And so I remember my mother had a good friend of hers who lived in our house. Her name was Doris, and her husband's name was Bo. These were African Americans. And so they lived with us with their children. And Doris was, my mother's best friend. So she's her age. So Doris was out in the street all the time. And Doris, I remember, came up to the house, and it was already dark. And she came to the room and she asked me, it's the first time I heard this term. She said, do you want to go to a jam?